my first question, Matt, is, are we in an era of faster warming?
Yeah, this is the big question in the world right now, I think, is just how bad are things? How bad are things? And are we seeing something completely different, or are we just seeing the working out of the prophecies of science over the last number of years? So I made some few little charts, not too many, just a few. And this is an interesting one because it shows the global temperature in September this year in the world, the global average temperature in the world. And you can see that September is right up here compared to the rest of the times going back. So in the instrumental record going back to 1880, this September is an extremely special month. The temperature in September in the world was warmer than July, the average July temperature between 2001 and 2010. So this is an indication of how serious the temperatures in September were. As Caty has said, we've had numerous days, about a third of all the days were above the 1.5 degrees temperature goal, if you like, a threshold of written in the Paris Agreement. So this is a significant and worrying trend that we're seeing right now. The biggest problem I think we have right now is not so much climate change, it's how do we keep audiences interested in climate change, because every day it's the same story. Oh, another storm, another temperature record, another terrible thing happening. It's like, and it's climate change, it's climate change, it's climate change. And the message we get back from the audiences all the time is, guys, give us, look at Ukraine, you have Gaza. Is there any hope, agency in this at all? And I would argue that there is a lot of hope, and there are lots of things that we can that can be done, and that we should be pointing out to audiences that are actually, if not good news, then at least not awful news.
I believe that us, as citizens, we could do a lot. We are part of the solution, and when we are together, we are in movements, we are aligned. This is how ordinary people can change things. We cannot underestimate that.
We talked earlier, you talked about the idea of social tipping points.
Exactly.
What does that mean, and how does it apply to climate change?
So it means, in fact, I was talking about that here a couple of years ago. And it's very interesting, and that's my main hope to combat climate change, because it is about change is not always linear. It's not always like that. So sometimes things happen, and they happen very fast, and then they change things the way we imagine. So faster than we imagine. So that could happen. There are like 7 or 6 social tipping points that have been observed that can really make a difference for climate change. Of course, one of them is electric mobility, most of what you mentioned before, but also social change. It's like just people coming together, being concerned, voting for people who really want to combat climate change or whatever. And we've seen this, for example, with the women rights, with gay rights. We've seen how people together could change things. We need to move the direction of the money. So it's like we need to tax all these big...
I think he's very keen on taxes.
Taxes, but just to put the money on the things that we want. And of course, you were talking about heat pumps in Spain, which are aerothermia, which is very, for example, geothermal energy is very expensive right now, and there are some subsidies, but you need to have the money to pay for it, and then you get the money back 1 year or 2 years after, but first you need to have the money. So of course that's not available for everybody. So in that case, I think we should change the way of how these subsidies are given. So you need to give the UK is doing that, in fact.
Yeah, exactly. So
you give the money before, and then you do the investment. So then you can, so more people can have access to that.
Yeah, there are lots of different examples. It's a really good question. How we're not going to be able to do any of this without money, and the people who are the vast majority of people don't have enough money to splash out on a new electric car or whatever it might be. The UK government is doing a thing to encourage people to do heat pumps. So even though in the last couple of weeks, all the headlines in the paper have been saying that the UK government is rowing back on net zero and they don't like it and this is politics, But they've actually increased the amount of money for a heat pump, so they will give you £7,500 now to buy a new heat pump, which is considerable investment because, you know, it's maybe more than half the cost. And there's no means test or anything for that, so you just have to apply for that and you get that money.
We need to tax CO2 tax in the border because, for example, at the European Union, there are some things that we need to import from China because it's not worthy to produce them, or at least this is what they say. It's not worthy to produce them here because of what you have to pay for the pollution it implies. So. But it doesn't make sense, you know, that you're still buying those things. So at least there should be a CO2 tax in the border. So it will be, you know, they can compete at the same level.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. You know, if you go on the internet, if you go on social media now, it's very hard to avoid, you know, if you just come down from another planet and you looked at social media to find out what's happening in the world, you would think, oh my God, this world is going to end tomorrow. You know, the scale of doomerist comments is huge, and an awful lot of them coming from young people who feel like there's nothing in this for them. And I think this is wrong and also incredibly sad. And I think it's incumbent on media in Spain and, you know, in the BBC elsewhere to ensure that we put a counter narrative to this idea that there is no hope, because I think there is hope.
Yes.
There's real change taking place. I mean, the way that we are seeing emissions being tackled, even they're still rising. They're rising in less quickly, and we are, I think, going to see a peak in emissions in the next couple of years. You know, it's going to take time. This is a massive, it's literally an oil tanker. You know, we're trying to turn an oil tanker here, and it is a slow business, but I think there is grounds for some optimism that progress is being made. Now, yes, the big question is speed, and this, because we're doing the things now that we should have done 20 years ago, that lag is going to impact people, and it's going to have costs for everybody on the planet. It's going to make things more expensive. It's going to be difficult, and in some parts of the world, it may take people's lives. But I do not think we're going to get to. I personally don't think we're going to get to a doomerist scenario. And I think it's our job as journalists to not dismiss this idea, but to look at it critically and to look at what's happening critically, and to put out issues of questions of hope here. I think it's too important. It's just too important. The Citizens' Assembly idea is really useful, and it's worked very well in the UK. It's worked very well in Ireland on other questions apart from climate change. But I think it's to be encouraged. I think the whole point of everything we do as journalists and everything we talk about is to try and say to people, look, this is all of us. This is everyone here. You should all take a part in trying to solve it. We're trying to encourage people not to be doomerist about it. We're trying to encourage people to look at the reality of it. And I think a Citizens' Assembly, they're a brilliant idea.